Duke and I are out here getting our morning sun. He gets a lot of morning sun. And by the way, you can't get your morning sun inside. The lights, the way that our light bulbs are, and even the way that the windows are in most houses, prevents us from getting the full UV light. So to nurture your circadian rhythm, as well as the health of the eyes, it's important to get real outdoor sun. Star Wars mug. Anyway, this is not about Star Wars or the sun, it's about forgiveness. So this month our theme is forgiveness because we're working on the Anahata chakra, opening through the heart. So I was just sitting here thinking about forgiveness and amends. In the 12 steps we have 2 steps for amends. The 8th step, we made a list of all people we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all, and then made direct amends to those people wherever it was possible, except when we do so would harm ourselves or others. But the 4th step is really the first part. Well, I was going to say that's the first part where we address forgiveness, but really it's in the first step, because I think that in the beginning, in order to really to foster the surrender to a new way of life, there has to be an element of forgiveness of self, and this is really what I'm getting to. Forgiveness of self, as well as the forgiveness of others, whether what they've done to us is real or perceived. I don't need an actual offense to have a resentment. I can build an empire of resentment, as my friend says, on just imagined offenses and trespasses. So my experience is that that was the beginning, was like forgiving myself for not knowing better, forgiving myself for not knowing how to live. My story is that most of the bad things that happened to me happened before I started using drugs, and so the drugs were a way of coping with the way that life had been. And as a result, I had a lot of anger, resentment, and blame towards myself, because I, for some reason, thought that I should have, come here. I should have popped out, and known how to live, and I didn't. And I remember this is maybe early in recovery, or maybe some before then, when I was going through some sort of I would have interactions with these kind of self-help things, or somebody sent me to some kind of therapy. I was in adult children of alcoholics meetings for on and off for a little while I was very high in those meetings, was high in group therapy and all that. But I remember I would hear people talk about how their therapist or somebody was telling them that they had to forgive their abuser, and I just remember being what the fuck, that is crazy, and they were talking about how that was so much of the source of their pain, was they're holding on to this anger. And now I understand what they were saying. I still would never say that if you're in that much unmanageability, emotional unmanageability, that the first place to go is to forgive the perpetrator. That unmanageability comes from the resentment against self, like this, and this is my experience. I had to forgive myself before I had any idea of what it would be like to forgive the real perpetrators, but also the people who were like not exactly perpetrators, but just like, were doing the best that they could, and their best wasn't good enough. They weren't there to protect me. They didn't guide me. They caused harm when they were supposed to be nurturing. That I couldn't get to that part of forgiveness until I got to the forgiveness. I had to go through the forgiveness of self to get to that forgiveness. And how did I do that? I did that by the intellectual understanding of coming to the intellectual understanding that the choices that I made were the best choices that I could make with the information that I had at the time. That's the intellectual understanding. That's not where forgiveness happens. Forgiveness happens in the heart. Forgiveness happens in happens in the system, right? We're a system. I'm not a body. I'm not a mind. I'm not a spirit. I'm a system, and those are parts of the whole system. And forgiveness happens when the entire system is involved, right? The entire system is involved in building the resentment, and the entire system is involved in moving the energy and finding the place of forgiveness. It's really an interplanetary journey to move from resentment to forgiveness, because it's true freedom. You're truly breaking out of, I truly broke out of a self-made prison. So again, how did I do that? There's the intellectual understanding, and then it's the daily practice of prayer and meditation, and that is like a whole nother, I don't know what you call these things, but it's a whole nother thing on the evolution of that. But it started with a commitment to a daily practice of seeking a new way of life and seeking freedom. And what that meant was that every single day I had to sit and be with my system as it was. Be with my system with its resentment, with its urgency, with its anger, with its disbelief, with its despair. Be with my system so that I became familiar with my system, familiar with the patterns of thoughts and feelings and sensations, and start to learn how to get the system to flow in its optimal way. And that is through this getting past what's in the front, which is all of the thoughts, going deeper into the mind to access some of the control centers of the entire system. And so when I was able to really come to a place of understanding, this is why they say the fourth step was like that kind of for the next part of that forgiveness piece, because this is where I understood like who I was at the time that I was in those situations where those things happened. And those things didn't happen to me. They were a part of my evolution and journey. I just was looking, I think someone came outside, but anyway, so it's the forgiveness, because like I said, I was making the choices with the information that I had at the time, but also looking at my part. And when I say my part, I do not mean my responsibility. I am not responsible for being a child. I am not responsible for being the victim of a violent crime, right? But there is a part, I have to understand what my part is in that, who I was and who I am that brought me to that place, in order to find the forgiveness of self. And then when I own who I am, I can forgive the other person, because I no longer need to rely on the anger, the resentment, the blame, the victimhood in order to foster my identity. When I know who I am without what has happened to me, then I no longer then my resentment and my anger against the perpetrator is no longer propping me up. It's like as if the prison is a part of a prop of my identity, right? And so once I refined myself, once I refound myself, I was able to let go of that prop. And I'll just tell you, this is getting a little long, but I'll just tell you that, like, that took a long time, right? And it was not a sustained effort. It was like over time, moving through these cycles, right? And living my life and doing my thing. And every time I came against a place where I felt that, like, okay, I can't go any further because this is what's in the way, then I would do a little bit more. And when I broke that last bar, what I saw that happened, I was in a deep state of meditation, and when I broke that last bar and allowed myself to forgive, one of the main perpetrators of violence and violation against me, that had a ripple effect, and the energy of love and forgiveness went out of me, went through that person, and rippled through that person's entire system and to all the things that led him to the place where he could do what he had done to me. And it went all the way back. It went all the way back through all the people who had done the things to him that made it so that he could do that to me. Because there is something, a person who can harm another person, especially someone who is a person who can harm another person who is extremely vulnerable, that person is broken. That's a whole other story. Anyway, I just wanted to, we'll come back to my stories, that's what I experienced in that meditation. And that is that in order for, when I got to that place and I broke free, that freedom rippled through not only the person who had harmed me, but to all the people who had harmed him. And that was as far as I could see. As far as I know, it went all the way out. That's why I'm doing this, because this is the physical energy of forgiveness with the palms open, right? So I always see the saints. I'm going to end this now. It's getting long. But this way, a lot of times you see them like this. You can't see my hand, but, one hand on the heart. I have that statue of the Immaculate Mother in my room, if you've been in sessions with me, and she has one hand on her heart and then her other palm is down, because this energy of the forgiveness comes through the heart, comes through the back of the heart. So I forgive myself, and it permeates through my body, runs down the back of my arm, and then emanates out my hand. And so if you've made it to the end of this talk about my experience with forgiveness and amends, then I wish you love and peace on your journey to forgiveness of self and forgiveness of others. Peace, peace.